Hey everyone, today I want to talk about the questions you need to be asking in interviews to be a top 1% candidate. The questions you ask in interviews are super, super important. They are just as important, if not more important, than the way that you answer questions, because it's half of the equation of being a strong candidate. It signals how you're thinking about the role, it signals how you want to succeed in the role, and it provides the hiring team with a sense of what you're thinking about. So I have a free question bank that I want to share with you, and I have the link in the description so you can grab it for yourself as well. These are the bank of questions that I suggest using, or at least using to inspire the questions that you're going to formulate for your next interview. And these are the exact ones that I share with my members in my community, so you can just grab this link and have this ready for your next interview. If you're interviewing right now, I want you to listen all the way through because it's super, super important. The last question that you ask in an interview is the one that usually closes the deal and gives you a good sense of if you're going to move forward, if they have hesitations, etc. So stay all the way to the end and I'll explain how to think about structuring the questions that you'll ask in your next interview. So let's go through this step by step because there's a way to think about this that allows you to essentially start formulating a really strong list and bank of questions that you can reuse depending on the stage of the interview you're in and the stakeholder that you're talking to. Those are the two important things you need to think about when you think about formulating questions. So let's get into it. If you haven't heard of me, my name is Stephanie. I am the owner of a community called Job Search OS, and I help tech job seekers land jobs in tech quickly. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description as well. Check it out if you want support in your job search. That's where I hang out. As I mentioned, the questions you ask are just as important as the answers you give. The stakeholders that you talk to and the stage that you're in are really important. So the biggest mistake I see people make in job searches is that they either ask the wrong questions to the wrong people or they ask questions too soon in the process. Job searching is like dating. You have to think about it that way. So when you are formulating questions, you need to think about, for example, if you're going on a first date with somebody, you don't ask them to marry them right away, right? I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. It would seem weird. So you got to think about the questions you ask in an interview in the same way. Sometimes if you ask something to a recruiter on the very first call, it seems presumptuous, it seems too soon. So let's keep that in mind. Typically, you have about 5 to 10 minutes at the end of a call. If an interview is structured really well, you will have about 5 to 10 minutes to ask questions. That allows for about 3 to 4 questions, and there are about 7 goals that you should think about when you ask questions, depending on who you're talking to again and the stage that you're in. So we'll go through that. You want to list more than you have time to ask just in case they get answered, but you want to have your top 3 to 4 that you want to ask that you know are strong, that make you stand out, that make you look like a top performer. The 7 goals that should be achieved by the questions that you ask are: number 1, you can ask questions that validate the job descriptions. These are questions like, I see this role is hybrid. What does that mean for your company? Or, I see that something listed in the job description, you're using this tech stack. Tell me, can you tell me more about the percentage of which ones you're using the most right now? Something along those lines. Learn more about the company. Number 2. So those are questions around the culture, around how they do things, how the team is growing, what their goals are. Number 3, understand how they operate. So again, questions about specifically how the team is broken up, where they're trying to go, what tools they use. So you want to just get really clear about how do they operate day to day. Capture key priorities and expectations. This is just like what it sounds like. So what are the key priorities for the role? What are the expectations for how to succeed in the role? Identify success criteria, number 5. So this is specific. What are the KPIs? What does the hiring manager hope this person will do in the first 6 to 12 months? Those types of questions. Number 6, determine your own interest. These are the questions that are really specific to you. So, for example, this could be, how many parents work at the company? How much do you work outside of work? Could this role eventually become fully remote? Whatever is important to you, make sure you ask about it. A lot of people make assumptions that everything in job descriptions is the full truth, which is not true. There's flexibility especially if you're a strong candidate, they will make exceptions for you. So ask questions that help determine what you're looking for next, what's most important. Make sure you ask about it. Surface and overcome their concerns. That's the closing question that I'm going to teach you that you need to ask every single time, every stakeholder, every interview. So those are the 7 goals of asking questions. You want to sort of make sure that throughout the interview process, you are covering these. They kind of go in order of stakeholder too. So typically recruiters can help you validate anything in a job description. You can learn more about the company from recruiters. Hiring managers, you want to understand how they how they run the team, what key priorities are and what their KPIs are, how to succeed in the role. And your own interest, you can ask those types of questions. Depending on what's important to you, you can ask that to the recruiter, the hiring manager, and peers and leadership. And then the closing question you should ask every single stakeholder every single time. Okay, so you want to tailor your question. This is the biggest mistake I see. People will ask questions that, again, the person doesn't know. So that's a wasted question. You never want to hear, I don't know, or I'd have to get back to you, or I'd have to ask my team or the manager about this. That's a wrong question. That means you asked a wrong question. It's not good. It's a waste of time. So put yourself in the shoes of the person you're talking to. If you're talking to a recruiter, they know about logistics, they know about culture, they know about the interview process, they know about team size, they know about role requirements, salary. That's kind of what they hold, right? If you're talking to a hiring manager or a cross-functional leader, you want to think about strategy. You want to think about goals, how to hit your goals. What are the company goals? What are the team goals? That's what they're thinking about. They're thinking about macro level company goals, leadership style you can ask about. Those are the questions that are really good. If you're talking to a peer, someone, either a cross-functional peer or someone on your team, you want to ask them about the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day. Those are great questions like, what's it like to work with this manager? How easy or hard is it to hit your KPIs? How many times have people been promoted? You can ask those types of questions to peers. What's the work like? What makes you stay at this company, at this job, et cetera, et cetera. So those are really good questions for peers. So just put yourself in the person's shoes and think about, okay, what do they know? Let me ask questions in line with that so they know how to answer them. So those are some of the things to keep in mind. There's a whole bank here. Again, you can grab this link in the description and have this bank for yourself. And I've actually tailored it so you can know what type of stakeholder these questions are good for. So recruiter, leadership, and peer, they're all organized in that way. And they're also organized by the 7 categories. So validate the job description, learn more about the company. As I said, validate the job descriptions. Why is this role open? I mentioned the hybrid question. Anything in the job description that I was left off, technologies used or scope of work or candidate requirements. Those are the types of questions you can ask a recruiter. Learn more about the company. Again, how big is the team? That's a good for the recruiter. What are the average number of PTO days that your team actually takes? That's great for a hiring manager, leadership, and or peer to get good insight. Under how do they do things? How do they operate? How do you approach X here? How do you approach UX research? How do you approach marketing, etc.? What transparency do you provide to the team around business financials? That's a good leadership question, especially if you are also interviewing for a leadership role and or at a small startup. I'm a really big proponent of asking really direct questions that help you stand out and help you become the type of candidate that they want to hire, in the sense that you're thinking about how to succeed. You're thinking about how if the company's successful right now, you're doing your due diligence. All of those things are important. And so a really strong candidate asks really good questions and really strong questions that signal that you're thinking about how to succeed, and also signal that you know what you're talking about and you know how to qualify them as much as they're qualifying you. It goes both ways, and that's what questions are for. It helps you qualify them and see if they're a good fit for you. So ask how much runway there is. Ask what their churn of their customers are. How many customers do they have? These are all good startup questions for small companies. You want to get the transparent answers there because you are making a big commitment if you decide to join. What do the first 90 days look like? This is a classic question that people ask too early in the interview process, and they ask the wrong stakeholder. This is a presumptuous question. So if you want to ask, it's a really good question, but you want to save it for the end, closer to the end, and you want to save it for someone who knows how to answer it, like the hiring manager or another cross-functional leader or a peer potentially, but more it's for leadership, as I said here. So make sure you ask that later in the process when you are getting towards the final stages. Capturing key priorities, some examples here. What does upward mobility look like? What are the quarterly goals look like? What do you want to accomplish in the first 3 to 6 months? Who would not be a good fit for this role? So a lot of these you can see are good for leadership. Identifying success criteria. What are the key metrics and KPIs for the role? How is success measured? Are merit-based raises offered outside of the promotion cycles? These are all good questions for leadership. Recruiters, some peers, a mix there. Determining your interest. These are some examples that I used to use and that other clients have used as well. What does a growth path look like for this role? What initiatives are currently the most important at the company, including DI or AI? What are expectations around others taking time off? Or you can ask, how much time off does this team actually take if there's unlimited PTO, for example. So you want to get a good sense of what is it really like if that's important to you. So as I mentioned, one of the most important questions, if not the most important question you need to be asking at the end of every single interview is, do you have any hesitations about moving me to the next steps? And then you want to pause and you want to listen for their answer. Now, some stakeholders might have a hesitation that comes up that they can articulate in the moment. This happens a little bit more, in my experience, in face-to-face interviews, more so than virtual. I'm not sure why, but I've found that so. But sometimes they'll be able to articulate it, which means you can just respond and rebuttal to something. So if they say, we're looking for someone actually with a little bit more X experience, you can just say, I totally understand. I feel really confident that I can learn really quickly. And for example, when I took my last role, I had to onboard and learn this tool XYZ really fast. Anytime they say, by the way, that you need more experience in something that you don't have experience in, just explain that you're a fast learner and that you could figure it out, or have an example that you are learning it already. But you want to ask this direct question. So as I said, they might have a rebuttal. They may have no rebuttal and just say, nope, no hesitations. Sometimes recruiters will say, I have no hesitations, but when you talk to the hiring manager, make sure you emphasize X. That's a really good response because the recruiter is essentially telling you how to prepare for the next interview. If they're interested in you, they will move you forward and they will indicate so on the call. If a recruiter says, no hesitation, but I need to circle back with my team, I'll get back to you, that's not really true. Typically recruiters do not need time, or they do not need to circle back with anyone. They are the gatekeeper. It typically means no. So pay attention to these patterns. That's why it's really helpful to ask this question every time, because you'll start noticing patterns in the answers you get. You'll start noticing what means no, what means maybe, what means yes. And that's really important and really helpful for your own data points. The other reason why this is a strong question is because nobody asks it. No one asks this question. It's a really direct closing question, but it helps you get a really clear sense of where you stand. If you're at the very final stages, you can also slightly alter it and say, do you have any hesitations about me being a good candidate for this role? It's super important to ask it in one sentence and be silent afterwards and see how they respond, because you'll start noticing these patterns. It makes you stand out. It makes you become a top candidate because you are thinking about how to succeed. So definitely ask that. I have a short checklist here to remember sort of when you're preparing for an interview. Make sure, again, you build that bank of questions you want to ask. The other thing is you want to have an opener, which I didn't list here, but the opener typically for every stakeholder that I suggest is, what characteristics are you looking for in X role? It's really helpful to ask this question to open because it's sort of an easy opener. You also can listen for what they say, what adjectives they're using, and you can repeat that back into the thank you email, which is a whole technique I teach in the community. So if you want more on that, definitely join. I can show you the thank you email templates that I suggest using, but you can just use their own language and plug it back into their email. That's templated. You don't need to rewrite this email every single time. It's a good email that I've created, and you can just plug that in. So you want to build that priority list of 3 to 4 questions for that particular stakeholder at that particular stage. Once you start learning which questions work really well, you can start reusing them for every sort of stage. You want to have a backup list of questions because some questions might be answered in the conversation, and you never, ever, ever, ever want to not have questions at the end. Even if they only give you 1 minute or 2 minutes, you want to have questions. If they ever ask, they'll say, do you have any questions for me? You should never say, no, I don't have any, or I'm good. None of that. That's not good. You want to always have questions. So have a backup list. So you, again, match the questions to the person in the room and the stage that you're in, and then always end with a closing question. That's pretty much it. You can grab this reminder list and this bank of questions by just clicking the link in the description. And if you want more support in your job search, come join us in Job Search OS. It is a community for job seekers in tech or job seekers tech adjacent. If you want to accelerate your job search, I suggest coming in because it is helping folks land roles in weeks and not months. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them below. If you want more tips and more support, you can, for free, you can also subscribe and like this video.